I'm getting things set up here. Hold on. There we go. And here we are. Hello, welcome to Conscious Mind Tripping. I'm Audrey Newmont, and we're in for a ride tonight. I have things to talk about. We're going to start with announcements. Nick just finished his beginner course on the sentient healing work that he does, and it was amazing. And he and I are going to take a little bit of a vacay next week, so I'm thinking I might be able to persuade him to be my guest next week while we're on our little hiatus. So we'll see if we have a show next week or not. And then when we come back, he's going to start his meditation and channeling class that he does. I believe it's an 8-week course, and it starts on the 13th. And if you've ever said you can't meditate, just so we're clear, you're meditating all the time. You're just not intentionally doing it. And the class that he teaches, not only will you intentionally do it, but you will be connecting to that higher part of you. And it is number one, it's a great group of people we have, and it's a fun class. So it'll be online and in person. And if you are going to be online, you can do it from anywhere. You can be anywhere in the country, and it's a really powerful thing to do. Online is very much like you're in the class. So if you're interested, call him at 818-865-8770, and you can get signed up for it. Or you can look on newmontcenter.net for more information, and other places on social media, so you can just check it out. Then I am going to be starting my first driver course coming up, and I'm deciding whether it's going to be a Saturday thing or if it'll be a few nights. So if you're interested in that one, let me know which one would work, and that'll help me make my decision. Now for the good stuff, and I'm going to start with a little bit of a funny story. One of my people called me up this morning and was like, I'm feeling spicy. She didn't say that. She basically said, I'm feeling somewhat of a vampire today. She was feeling like in a really, really weird mood. Hello, I can see you're on here. I don't know who exactly that is, but I see your comments when I'm looking on my StreamYard. I'm good, actually. So I'm glad to have you here with me, because it's always nice to see these people that I'm talking with live. And for those of you that watch it afterwards, thank you. So this person was telling me this morning that they were feeling somewhat spicy, like a vampire. And, you know, they got a lot of pent up emotions, and it was just rolling in them. So I didn't miss a beat. I told her, I said, hey, go howl. It's a full moon tonight, and when we howl, it is a great way to get that stuff out. They were like, what? I said, yeah, it really can be helpful. You start from here, your solar plexus down here, and you just move it up and you just howl. And there's something in the way that when you're howling, that sound that comes out it's a good vibrating escape for whatever those pent-up emotions are. So I told her, I said, I'll stay on the phone. She goes, well, I can't. I'm in my apartment or whatever. And I said, then go and howl into a pillow. And so she took me with her, and I hear this muffled, oh, just howl. And I was like, okay, do it again. So they did it again. Oh, you're just getting it out of her system. And I was like, all right, go one more time. And then she did. And I said, how do you feel? Actually, I feel better. So when we have things that are stored up in our body, there's all these different ways to release it and let it go. Crying is an obvious one, because our body was designed to do that. It's letting go of pent up things. But that howling can be a big deal. And I get it. we were trained, that's what animals do, or whatever we were trained. It's not cool. It's whatever the beliefs are around it. But when I'm working with people, especially when I used to work in rehabs, I would take them out to the edge of the cliff and I would have them just holler it out or scream it out. And it's amazing how that can be transformative. It can just release those pent up things in such a powerful way. In fact, I'm remembering a group I had at my house one time, and this person, she let it out. And then she just started sobbing, and we were all just holding her in that space. And it was one of those experiences I'll never forget, because it was such a magnificent release. And it was powerful. So today is the full moon. It's also April Fool's. And and in April Fool's, there's all these beliefs around it. I don't really go for that stuff, but with the full moon, there is this ability to let things go on this particular evening. I just had a client in here, and this person has been holding on to a fair amount of things and been doing a really good job of processing and working through some pretty big challenges. And I gave them the instructions to take some of the things that they've been holding on to and write it down on paper, and then maybe put it in a big pot or whatever and take it outside. And on that piece of paper, the things that you're letting go of, you are burning it. And as you're burning it, if you want to howl and let it go like that. If you want to cry, you get to cry. You get to do whatever you want. But the intention on a full moon is to let things go. Remember, your heart is the most important part of you. And when we've got too much built up in here, and, it's clogging, and it just makes things hard to deal with. So when we have that ability to dump it, however you're going to dump it, I call it dumping the trunk, then you are in your power seat. So the other piece of paper that I told this person, so that one piece you're writing down, these are the things I'm done with. These are the experiences that I had, that I did, that happened to me, whatever those things are. And you are creating a completeness in the experience. You've learned from it. You've gained that wisdom, gained that resiliency, and you're letting it go. And that's what we are capable of doing. Hold on just a minute. I'm going to check something here. Bear with me for a second. And just one second. I forgot that it's easier sometimes to see your comments on here. So if you're on Facebook, on Audrey Newmont, I can see your comments here too. Okay? And that way it makes it easier for all of us. And then I have a whole bunch of notes today, which those of you that have watched me before have. I'm sorry, I'm slightly distracted. Whoever this is that's on the that's on these comments. It's Josie. Hi, Josie. It's nice to meet you. And I don't know what that means when you say I have too much teeth. They're good for eating, chewing things and whatnot. So I don't know what it means to have too many of them. All right. So let's get into the first topic of conversation. When people come to me and they tell me their stories, everybody has stories. Everybody has a history. Everybody has the trauma that they have had in their life, and that trauma can be very creative. They hold on to it. They hold on to the story, and they do what they do with it. A lot of times they just hold on to it, and it's a victim kind of situation. I've been at the effect of this, and sometimes it's like, well, that's why I am the way that I am. And it's like, it's not why you're the way that you are. You've had an experience that had an impact, created a belief, created new habits, created whatever that is. And it's not who you are, it's what you've learned to do. We all have those things that have happened in our lives where we take on the programs about it. And one of the common things that I have seen over all these years of talking with people, and a lot of them as a therapist, there's similar stories. And I'm going to give you two versions of a similar story. So the first story is this person had gone to a therapist, and the therapist said that they needed to air out their grievances. And it was with somebody that was very close to them. And so the person took it quite seriously and aired out the grievances and wrote the person a letter. And in the letter, they literally said, these are all the things that have happened. And it was a parent. And they wrote all these things. This happened, this happened, this happened, all these things that they felt that the parent didn't do, the things that the parent did that they maybe shouldn't have done, all this laundry list of things. And then at the end of it, it's like, okay, I've said it. Now, can we move on? Well, needless to say, the person who received the letter didn't appreciate it and didn't want to move on. And it didn't end up working very well and never really healed the relationship with that person. And then I'm going to give you the second version of what that looks like. And I had a client and I gave a similar kind of homework to. And this person is the parent and didn't have a relationship with their child, who was then an adult, and they had had a hard experience. And so I gave the person the homework to look at their timeline and look at the relationship with that person. And in that relationship, a lot of times we have a tendency to focus on, well, they did this and they did that and they did all of these things. So in the homework, I told this person to look at what they did and look at the impact that that might have had on the relationship. So looking at the first one, I asked, was there anything that you put in that letter, the person that was airing all their grievances, did you put anything in there that said in some way, shape, or form that you took responsibility for any of the things that happened? And it was a definite no. It was just an airing of the grievances. So when the person received the letter, there was no mention of what the person had done and taking any responsibility for these things. So that's why when I'm giving that specific kind of homework, I'm saying you're looking at all of it. You're looking at what you did, what they did, and you're looking to make sense of it, because in the scheme of things, these people love each other, they're family. And when I gave this person that assignment, they took it quite seriously and they looked at the relationship and they're like, this might have been a challenging time when I did whatever. And it's never worth the whole story or all the details. Everybody has them. Everybody's unique in their relationships with everybody. And we've all got whatever it is that we do and whatever we've had done to us. And in the bottom line, it's the feelings that matter. We feel hurt. We feel betrayed. We feel that level of anger. We feel all these different feelings around it. So when I gave that person that assignment, they took it to heart and they met up with the child, the adult, and they said, look, I would like to make this relationship better. I would like for us to hit a new choice point and move forward. And it was a really interesting thing, because as they said everything as the mother, the adult looked at them and said, you think that's it. Well, there's all these other things. And my client was rather floored because they never heard all those other things. They never knew that the person was bothered by all of these things. And they were never told, you did all of these things. So it hit one fatal rush. And it was like, that was a lot to process. Needless to say, this happened and it's been a while, and these people are doing well at this point, and it's still a process. But the main key point in it on both of these stories is the person who was hurt, the person who felt at the effect of things, never said at the time that it was bothering them. They never spoke and said, hey, you're doing this, it doesn't feel good. You said this, it doesn't feel good. And they never gave the other person the opportunity to see that from their vantage point. And that is common across the board, that people don't say what's on their mind. They don't speak their word. And this goes to my notes. There's a reason why we don't talk. There's a reason why we don't say what's on our mind. And I use myself as an example on this sometimes because I was that person. When I was a kid, you did not speak your word, because if I was angry, if I was upset, it, number one, wasn't heard. My mother didn't listen. She didn't want to know about it. If I got upset, she's like, I'll give you something really to be upset about. You go to your room. And it was never learned that I was all right to be angry. I was, okay to have whatever going on with me. It was just simply, you just don't talk about these things. And so I didn't. And there's all these different reasons why we don't talk. And that is one of them. And it goes down to punishment. If I'm voicing my anger or voicing my upset at something that's going on, I would have been punished for it. And it just is what it is. I'm not saying that she was wrong or bad. She learned what she learned, and she learned that's how we parent. Nobody ever gave her parenting classes. But when we're an adult and we're wanting to be in our choice point and really be able to own our word with people, there's a few ways to do it. And there's a few reasons to look at why we don't own our word. So another one of them is being dismissed about it. Like as a kid, you go to your parent, it's like, hey, I've got whatever going on. Oh, it's okay. Just let it go. And we just learned that whatever's going on with us, it's obviously not that important, and we better just let it go, which is another word for let's just suppress it. Then there's another one. People have this is a good one. And again, a lot of these are very common. And I've heard this many times. It's the thing where there's whatever going on and don't talk about it. Or we'll talk about it within our family. You don't have it go outside of the family. And we learn we better just suppress that, put it over into a compartment, make it where we're not talking about it, and move on in life. So let's not talk about it. Let's present and keep our dysfunction to ourselves. And then there's another one. This was one of mine too. The people-pleasing one. So if I'm angry about something, maybe I can just find a way to make it better. I can work in whatever way to please the other person, or just be that good girl. Let's just move on, put those things over here that might make them angry, might make them upset. Let's just go and be nice, maybe do something for them, or whatever that would be to bring it back to an even keel, right the ship, as it were. Another one is gaslighting. We minimalize things. So you go to a parent or you go to an influential person, and it's like, well, this is going on. Well, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Or I don't think that really happened. or whatever it is that they say, where it's like your word is not accurate, even though you kind of know your word's accurate. But, you know, let's not talk about it. Let's just move on. You must be imagining things, or certainly that's not it. And I'm saying all these things. As I'm saying them, think about if there's something within your story that looks like this. A lot of times when you're in your own life, we don't think about these things. We just go on an autopilot. It's just something that we do until we hear something or learn something where it's like, well, wait a minute, I don't have to do it just like that. Another one that people do is, this is another big one, that loyalty to another person. Like, I'll be in session with people and we're looking at their 0 to 8, why they do what they do. And a lot of times the person's older and they've got a whole nother relationship with their parents. So they don't want to go back there and say, well, she did or he did, whatever. I don't want to make them wrong. I don't want to make them bad. So I don't want to look at it. They just go to that loyalty of, let's just, again, put that over there. Things are fine now. That didn't matter. But it does, because that 0 to 8 time in our childhood is when we take on a lot of our programs, a lot of our beliefs in who we are, how we speak, what we do, how we honor ourselves in the experience. A lot of times we're honoring somebody else at the expense of ourselves. So these aren't things to look at and to blame anybody or make them wrong. As a parent in my kids 0 to 8, I was a different person and I did whatever. And it's not the thing I continue to do. So I learned from it and I grew from it. So my daughters and I are able to talk about it and make amends with it and let go of those experiences when there were hard moments with that. But if we don't look at it and we're not taking responsibility for it, we literally can't change it. It's all over here. It's suppressed. It's hidden. Let's just forget it and move on. But it's still over here. So tonight's topic is to find a way, and there's all these different ways to let that part be done. Like for tonight, it's a full moon. So if there's things that we're holding on to, this is that opportunity to not make somebody wrong or bad, just recognize that's what the experience was. That was the program. And more importantly, who do I choose to be now? And how am I going to constructively own my word? There was one more that I have on here. These things that we do, that we take on a role, especially when there's a lot of kids, I guess even one kid, there's that kid that's going to be the one that's the rebel, they're up against it and they're just, yeah, you're doing, and it's like they're just in the battle. And then there's another one who, well, they're in the battle, so I'm going to just stay back and I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm not going to engage and carry on with what they're doing. Hold on, I'm looking at these comments again in case you guys are asking questions. So there's no questions and we're all okay. So why do we talk about all of this? It's because there is a lot of suppression going on. And it's like when I'm talking about those first two people, the first person never had that opportunity to really work through those challenges with the parent, and I think they regretted that, not being able to find that space in this lifetime to be complete with the person. There was still that level of regret, remorse, that level of, we just weren't in a good relationship in this lifetime. And then the second one, when they were able to speak their words with the person, then they were able to find a new way to be with each other. I just had something recently where I was in a group of people, and two of these people were having a moment. We'll just leave it at a moment. And it was like I'm watching this experience play out, and the one person said something, and it was like, that didn't come across very well. I didn't say anything. And then later on in the night, the person who said whatever at first said something again. And then the second time, the other person looked at them and said, ouch, that hurt. When you said that doesn't feel very good. And it's an interesting thing because I called the person afterwards and I was like, wow, you know what? I was extremely impressed that you were able to hold your word on that, speak what was on your mind and not just take it and shove it down. It was really important for that experience to happen, I think, in that they said to the person, this doesn't feel good. And the interesting part of it is when you speak your word to another person, you're being a mirror for them. You're showing them, look, here's what you said and here's how it feels. This is how you're looking. And we're all mirrors for each other. And when you're able to be in the moment and look in the mirror, like this other person that they were saying this to, they didn't see it. They were just like, whatever. And they weren't able to be in the experience to see how the words affect the other person. So what do? They're going to continue to say things that are basically not kind. They're going to say things that on a level push people away. And they don't learn that lesson of how impactful their words can be for another person. The person that heard the words and said something, on the other hand, they're in their power by being able to be the kid in the back seat going, hey, this doesn't feel good. That's what everybody or most people really want. They want to be able to express to another person, when you say this, when you do this, it doesn't feel good. And then when you're the person on the other side, and instead of being on a defense, however that defense comes across, because there's a lot of ways to be defensive. You can be angry about it. You can be dismissive about it. You can be all those things that I just brought up. And if you're being all those things and you're not actually taking it in, there's a part of it where you don't get to level up. You don't get to learn what our unconscious actions create. And then we'll just keep doing those things and it just keeps happening. So when you're in a moment, you have to look at, which person am I being in this story? Am I hearing something, experiencing something with another person that doesn't feel good? Am I sharing it back to the person and letting them know this is what your actions are causing? If we're doing that and we're being the mirror for another person, it doesn't matter what the other person says or does with it. We're owning our word. We're owning our ability to, instead of hold it in our heart and be resentful, be whatever those feelings can be, we're letting it go and owning that space in our heart for more of the good feelings in life. So if you're that person and you're owning your word, there's a way to do that that's very constructive. The amount of times that I work with people and they don't want to say something because they don't want to be controversial, they don't want to be confrontive, they don't want to be in a conflict. It's okay to be in a conflict. Again, it goes back to our childhood where we feel that we can't say something. When you say it with respect, when you say it with kindness, when you say it with that kind of conviction of, hey, this is just what's going on, or it's what had happened, and I don't like it, it doesn't feel good, I don't want to do this game anymore with you. And more importantly, you're saying, in this choice point of now, how about we do this? How about we create from a new vantage point? Then you're in your power. You're owning your word. So that's the best that you can do. If the person takes it, great. Then you can hit a reset and you can restart. You can be in a new way with each other. So then if you're the other person and somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, you said this, you did whatever. Are you being defensive in any way, shape, or form? Are you not just wanting to look at it? Because sometimes we don't want to look in that mirror. Sometimes somebody tells us we're wrong, we're bad, or whatever. It's like, I don't want to see that. We want to turn our head away. We want to be on the defense of it. But when you can take the defense down and you can look at what the other person is telling you with a new perception, when you can step back and say, oh, you know what? I kind of did just say that. It might have felt bad. All right, I get it. I can see it. And then you're able to take responsibility for your unconscious actions, your unconscious words, whatever that is, and you're able to see it clearly, then you're in the power seat. But if you don't take responsibility for it, you're going to keep doing it, and you might find people dwindling. You might find things not being as happy in your life, as abundant as your life. Because when we've got stuff that we don't take responsibility for, we know it. On a level, we know it. And then we'll do it again, and it's like, oh, shit, I did it again, but I'll just put it over there. I don't want to deal with it. I'll just keep not taking responsibility. It doesn't go away. It builds up. And as it's building up, there creates a lot of buildup in here. And remember, this is the most important thing, our heart. So when you are being defensive, you're creating like a barrier around the heart, which limits the amount of joy. It limits the amount of love. It limits a lot of things. The person that I'm talking about with the first letter, and they said all that stuff, they, vented all of that. When they finally spoke with me, when I finally understood about all this person had a lot of feelings that were suppressed. They lived in a lot of anxiety. They had a lot of, challenges in their life. And when we hold on to these things, when they don't get resolved, and when they weren't taking responsibility for those things, all of that built up. So having that understanding and that awareness and being able to take responsibility for whatever we've done and be in that ability to see the remorse in it and own the lesson in it. And most importantly, on like a full moon, being able to let it go and trust and know that is a lesson learned. And for the future, I am. What are you creating in that moving forward? So it's not anymore an unconscious habit of whatever it is that they do. They've literally stopped that track, and they are now taking responsibility and creating a new way of being with it, a new way of, understanding how their actions, how their words, how everything that they do has an impact not only on the people around them, the environment around them, but on themselves. Because once you start dumping that trunk and you have more space in the heart for love, for joy, for all of the good, healthy, feel good things in life, then it reduces the amount of anxiety. It reduces the amount of depression from suppressing those feelings. You're bringing them to the surface and you're letting them go. So that heavy depression gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And before you know it, I see it happen all the time. People are creating a whole new experience. So when we're talking about all of this, none of it is to put any blame on anything. There's nothing to blame. Like the situation with the first person, that parent, I'm pretty sure if you were to ask them, they learned what they learned and then repeated it with the relationship with their child. That's what people do until they learn a new thing to do, until they learn something different. So when you're looking at all of this, there's a process to it of letting things go and being in the choice point now where you're wildly creative. I'm hoping all of this is making sense. Another reason why it's important, when we don't dump the guilt, when we don't dump the shame of what these actions are. I was just in the last session that I had with my client, it was like I was telling them, because there's things that everybody needs to dump at some point. And a lot of times people say, I can't let that go. That was really bad. I'm a bad person. It's like, we're not bad people. We come into this life and we learn what we learn and we create from that place. So I was using myself as an example in my timeline. I mean, I'm 63 at this point. In my timeline, back here, I was pretty unconscious. And I did some things that were unfortunate. And here I am now. I had to look in the mirror, literally had to look at my behavior because it was hurting people. And it's not that I was a bad person or I was wrong. It was unintentional. So when I was able to recognize it, because I lived with a lot of guilt, shame, remorse, those feelings, when we don't dump them, you can almost guarantee there'll be something creating from that place over and over again. And if we don't resolve it and it keeps building up, it can look worse and worse and worse. So that part of taking responsibility for our actions, what we're saying is like what I did back here. And it took me a long time because I didn't have me in this conversation. If somebody had told me like I put it in my book, it would have been a whole nother story, because I lived with a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of remorse for certain actions. But like I was telling this person, once you resolve it, once you understand it and you learn from it and you grow from it, I did those things and I looked at the timeline and it was no accident that I did them. My childhood and all the things that I believed about me, it totally created the firestorm. It created the bad moments. So when I learned from that and I was able to take responsibility and I was able to dump the trunk, I literally let it go. It was an experience that was complete. And when it's complete and done, and I gained that wisdom. I gained that understanding, and I knew, and I know that this person that learned from it would never do that again, would never have that experience again. Once we get that and we're in that choice point, then it's complete. And like I told this person, I have no feelings on it whatsoever at this point. And to be clear, I'll never tell the stories. I don't need to. That's my story. I can share that I did things that I regretted and that I had remorse about. To be clear, I didn't kill anybody, but I did create hard feelings. So when then I understood it, I expressed my remorse, expressed it in my word, apologized, which is a lot different from I'm sorry. Apologizing means I see it, I understand it, and that'll never happen again. And then you are dumping the trunk, and there's that space to create the new conscious intention. And that's kind of how life is. That's the story. My clients come in, it's like, how do you do this? There's all these ways to do it. And that timeline work and looking at not what the other person did, but what you did. In AA, they have a whole process for that. So you're making amends and you're saying, this is complete. I apologize. I hope that we can meet here now and begin again and know that I will never do that, never say that, whatever. So you're learning from it and you're creating from a new vantage point. And that's how healing happens in relationships. You got to remember something. We came into these lives in these relationships to experience the contrast, to learn through each other, to be mirrors for each other. And it's not to hold on to it forever, to say, you know what, I blame you for the rest of my life for what you did. When we do that, when we hold on to that anger with another person, that's on us. There's that great quote that says, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and to understand that the prisoner is you. So as much as you're expressing, when another person expresses and they express their, their regret and they give you all of that, I think that's another big one for people that it's hard to do. It's like, I don't want to let that go. I don't want to, think that you're free from it. In reality, it's the person holding on to it that's not free. So we're never saying that what they did was okay. A lot of times it's not okay at all. A lot of times it's wildly destructive. And I mean, we could go down a whole rabbit hole with that conversation. But as much as we are holding on to it, we keep it alive. We stay in the other person's game. So whether they apologize or they don't apologize, within us, we have the ability to let it go. And it is a process. And truly, sometimes it is wildly challenging. Sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's just hard to be on. I'm going to give you an example. I had my own story around somebody who is going to remain anonymous, but it was somebody important in my life. And this person lied about pretty much everything. And then they did things and created a moment where my life was extremely challenging. And they didn't take responsibility for their behavior. And in the scheme of things, really created a very, very, very hard moment for themselves. And in that whole relationship with that person, there was a lot that I had been holding on to, a lot. And it was a very traumatic point in my life. And as I started learning all of this, there was a point where I had to look at the timeline with this person. And I chose this person. I stayed with the person, even knowing on a level that it might not have been a good idea. And I let them continue to be in my life. So as I was looking at the timeline, because I wanted to be done with the hard feelings, I had to take responsibility for what I did. And the more that I took responsibility and let go of the painful parts, there was a little bit of freedom. There was some more freedom and more freedom. And before you know it, the cord was cut and I was done. And there was no more feeling around this person at all. And there's been a few people in my life that have held that role. When we blame them, we stay in their game. When we continue to be angry and in the old experience, we stay back in the old experience. We don't have the ability to create from a place of freedom. So there's all these things that we get to do or not. If there's a point in your life at this moment where there is things that you're holding on to, it's well within your right to look at it from a new vantage point and let it go. And it is a process to do it. But again, when you're looking at every bit of all of this, and you know that the controller is your mind, and we hold on to these things in the mind, we hold on to them in the heart, that's the controller of us. That's the thing that makes everything happen. So that first button on the controller, intention, when you look at the intention, was it the person's intention to do that to you? Probably not. They were unconsciously unconscious, and they had their own beliefs that were going on, their own stuff, and we were at the effect of their unintentional stuff. And some of it you can look at and say, well, it was intention. They did intentionally want to hurt me. Even that, believe it or not, is one of those things that can fall down into the department of unintentional, because when we're doing those kind of things, we're way down in the controller. We're not thinking clearly. We're not owning that part of us that's intentionally creative, believe it or not. And the reason why we look at it like that is because it's easier to let go of if we don't make it about ourselves. That's their stuff. We put ourselves in the moment of experiencing with them, however that looks. And why it's most important is because when we are here now and we're able to dump that trunk on these things and let it go, then you're free. And I get it. There's some big stuff that people do and have had done to them. But what's the most important thing is this moment now, in this moment. So when we're dumping the trunk, when we're letting it go, when we're learning through and from the experience, there's your freedom, there's your power, and there's your ability to create from a great intention. It's a choice. And I get it. I truly get it. Sometimes it's not an easy choice. And that's why we get support. That's why we do the various things that we can do to find a way to make sense of all of it and to process it. So on today's full moon, is there something you'd like to let go of? Whether it's you did it, they did it, whoever did it, it's an experience at this point. And a lot of times it doesn't even have a unconscious consequence. Many times I say, well, it happened back there. Is anything, is there a consequence from it that's happening now? They're like, no. Well, all right. Well, then the only place that it's loitering is in here and here. And you're creating from it and not making your life very fabulous. So when you look at all of this with the critical thinking, those questions that you ask yourself, is it worth holding on to it anymore? How would it look if I were free? How would that feel? What could I do with this freedom? When we let that go, we reset the timeline to be creating from a very intentional place. We're not loitering, looping back into the old stuff. I know it's a lot. And truly, this is like not an easy thing to sit here and say all of this. I'm not even looking at the comments anymore. I'm just sharing because it is important. So many, many people have these kind of experiences. And when we come together as a collective and we start creating from a much more intentional space, from a freed space, not blaming and shaming and doing all the things that create division, then we can really create something fabulous in our individual lives and as a collective in the whole, in this world. I'm telling you, we're in an interesting moment right now, and it's fabulous how creative we're being. There's a shift that's happened, and the veil is getting very thin, and we have the ability to create in magical ways. But when you're creating, you've got to be the adult in the front seat, managing the kid in the back seat, and really owning that ability to bring in the first driver, to use that first driver, to feel the power of that first driver and be present with that. So if we've got those feelings that are challenging, then it kind of gives us a sense of separation from the first driver. And the kid in the back seat's kind of leaning over and trying to grab the wheel to drive. And we're not owning our ability to drive from a point of power. We're driving from old stuff, fear, guilt, shame, remorse, anxiety, stress, worry, those things. So if you want to get rid of those things, you got to get rid of some of the junk in the trunk. Just saying. It's a choice, and it is a process. Nobody ever dumped their trunk overnight. So if you have any questions, text me or call me or write something in the comments here and let me know what your questions are. I'll maybe address them in a different podcast, or maybe I'll just write back. But as I'm looking at the time, it is that time. It's amazing how I can talk for an hour, almost an hour. It's a lot, huh? I think I've gone through all of my notes here. Yeah. I think that person that I'm talking about that was in that experience recently, kudos to you. I called this person up and I was like, I'm so impressed with you. I'm still so impressed. When people own their word in a moment like that, it's like, yeah, love to see that. I wish more people would. So take a moment and write down how you're going to be intentional this week. What are you going to do to speak up when there is something? You can look at the Conscious Mind Tripping. There's a podcast that has my book. You can go straight to the video on constructive communication. When we're communicating like that, you just can't go wrong. But when you're not communicating and then it all comes out in a big ass rush afterwards and it's not pretty, there's a whole nother story. So let me know how you all do with that. And you are free to share this video. And thank you very much for watching if you've gotten to this part with it. I love you all very, very much. And like I said before, I'm going to be gone with Nick next week. We'll see if we post something or not. Check out his meditation class coming up, and I will catch up with you all soon. Much love to you. Good night for now.